I've been wanting to have this conversation with you since I had the idea of creating a podcast. I had a short list of men that I wanted on. John was one of them.
Yeah.
You were like, I think you and John were the first two names I put down. I think Amir was on there too, who I haven't chatted with yet, and a handful of other guys, some of which I've reached out to and had a conversation with, but we're still in the infancy. This will be probably episode 15 or 16, something like that.
Excited to be part of it.
Man, I'm so excited we get to do this
We have
together.
so many great conversations anyway.
I
We might as
know.
well record them.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for some context, anybody watching or listening to this, man, I don't even know what to call you. Roberto, Robert, Dr. Glover, the motherfucking king, all of the above. The man.
LFA, don't forget that.
LFA, of course. But we've had a long and beautiful relationship together, starting in about, I think, 2019 in the MLT with John.
Sounds about right. It goes back 6+ years.
Yeah, and like you were saying, just this past weekend, I went from Granjero, the farmer with the long hair who you were judging the hell out of for my feminine flow boy, to you just joined us 5 days at our retreat here in Austin, which is where we are now at Alan's house. And just so cool for us to have this relationship that's just, been woven in our lives, and sometimes connecting more than others. We were in the small group for a while. Right. With some really great men, and now you're here joining us and really offering a lot of your wisdom and just your kind of eldership and your holding and all your experience, and just feel really honored that you got to be a part of and witness us in our kind of creation of this, because back in 2019, I think you were talking to me, and who else was it that didn't end up joining us the next year? It was another young guy. We were kind of the youngest guys in the program.
Uh-huh.
Niall. So
yeah.
Niall and I, you really, I remember this moment you said, I think you guys are the future of this work. Right. And you supported us in a lot of ways. You made EMLT year 2 happen for me, really. Right. Literally supported me in getting into that program.
I remember, I think it must have been yesterday or day before, towards the end of the program out there with you guys. And I think it's when you were leading when we did that Wim Hof breath where you put your head down on the ground. You're up there leading it. I'm listening to you. And it came back to me that I'd forgotten about that, but where I had really encouraged and supported you and Niall both to continue doing the work. I said, any way I can help you guys do it, because the world needs you guys. And here I was watching you 5+ years later, leading this amazing workshop. And it just felt good to know, okay, I had something to do with supporting you to really, do that deep dive into the work. So I was doing my Wim Hof, putting my head on the ground, doing the lean back. Yeah. It was a good investment. I was glad I supported you in that.
Oh, well, I'm glad it's been able to come full circle, and for us to invite into everything that we're creating, and that you're just such a yes to being a part of it. And yeah, that through line of having your support, which I think it was encouraging, and I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you, and beyond just how you supported us financially, even in that situation, but just your encouragement. And John had a similar thing where I was really just there the first year to figure out what was going on and learn.
Yeah, you were just checking out one of the workshops.
Yeah.
Before, and I was in the program, and you know what I was most intrigued by was the sandals that you wore.
Oh, yeah.
That had the little copper disc in them.
Yeah.
And you were explaining to me how it grounds you, and and I thought,
the Earth
that's
Runners.
Really interesting stuff.
Well, what's hilarious about that is every single one of these 13 Pines guys bought a pair. Yeah, so.
I still don't have a pair, but I'd rather just go without shoes.
Totally.
Down in Mexico, I go barefoot as often as I can. But yeah, I was really intrigued by those sandals.
I love
you were
that.
wearing.
They've kind of become like one of those signature things where people know me for those. And now when we were at that retreat, there's probably, 7 or 8 pairs of guys wearing them there. But all that being said, yeah, just
all sandal stuff out of there.
Yeah, all the sandal stuff, yeah, just so honored, and really has me, John and you and a few of the other kind of older men in my life, really who are old enough to be my father, have been so important in my evolution and in seeing something sometimes that I don't see in myself. Like I said, I came to that program that first year and was just checking it out. And even John too was very encouraging. Once I joined the second year, he's like, he started giving me opportunities to do a little bit of leadership, a little bit of teaching. And I was, eating it all up. And I could have never imagined like 4 or 5 years later being here right now doing what I'm doing and having these conversations. So just such appreciation from the heart for you standing for me. And it just makes me think of all the men who could really use men like you in their lives, older men who have built things, who have been divorced, who have gone through losses, who have had big wins in their life, and how that is needed. Because as great as my dad was, and he is a great man, he could never provide all of the experience of life that some of these other older men have been able to encourage me and guide me through.
You want to riff on that just for
I
a
do
minute?
want to riff on that.
Because one of the things I've been telling men, because I've been working with men for 30 years, and almost every guy's got a father wound. A handful of guys I work with say, yeah, my dad was a good man. I have great respect for him. But there's always a but. Mm-hmm. He fell short in some way. And I've really come to tell men, by default, every father is going to be inadequate. That's just the reality of it. My father was in many, many ways. I was towards my son. And the fact of the matter is that our ancestors were raised by, just a tribe of men, a team of men. If you look at throughout human history, for about 1.5 million years, we all grew up in tribes. So we were initiated by a tribe of masterful men who'd been initiated themselves by masterful men. So we had, 20 dads, 50 dads, 100 dads. And even if we just go back 100 years ago, before, we became so industrialized, so many families moved off the farm into the city, if you and I had grown up 100, 150 years ago, we would have grown up probably around our grandfather, uncles, cousins, just men would have surrounded us in the extended family. And we would have learned from all of those men. Now we got a dad, probably not learning from our grandfathers, from our uncles, from our cousins, and certainly not from a tribe of good men. And so a single man who was himself not initiated by good men, he's got his own addictions, his own distractions, his own worries, his own traumas, his own, demons. And so that one person by nature is going to be by default less than ideal. And so I think a lot of men, that's one of the tough one for guys to get over is wherever their father was less than perfect. And that's what they tend to focus on, the less than perfect part, not the part that he did contribute that was of value. And I know I went through all of that as well. I didn't talk to my dad for 15 years.
Wow.
And what shifted it is when I began to focus on what I was grateful for. And there was a lot to be grateful for. And I started focusing on that and reconnected with him, and then came to the realization and acceptance, he had his limitations, as we all do. He had his emotional intelligence, his social intelligence. He just had limitations. And once I accepted that, when he had a stroke and passed away, I was really at peace with that. And really for many years now, we've been working on just building a committee, like what we all need, of just good men in my life that sometimes they parent me, sometimes they're just my companion. So, I've just built that crew. So every dad's going to be, less than adequate. And even whatever I've contributed to your life and your development, there's still gaps.
Of course.
There's still holes. There's still, John's, contributed a lot. And you'll continue to find other men that make up for what our fathers couldn't do, which then lets us just have gratitude for what our fathers did do.
Yes. Actually, when I first got into this work, I, like many men, I held my dad in really high regard, and I still do, but I was resistant to speaking anything poorly of him, even though there was obviously a lot of flagrant things that I was like, that wasn't good or right. But I had this protection around it that I didn't want that idealism, because we look up to our fathers, to be shattered or to think of any less of him, almost like I would be disrespecting him in some regard. And then a lot of I did a lot of work around that and really started to see the ways that I had been dropped. And I think that brought up some like resentment kind of. I didn't go no contact with him or anything, but really like, hey, what the fuck? Right. And then recognizing, I've come full circle to your point where it's just like, I love him for everything that he's offered me. And it's unrealistic to put that amount of pressure on one person or that amount of expectation for them not to raise you with their own wounding. Because I know when I have a son at some point, I would love to have a son if that happens, that I'm going to fuck it up too. Like I'm going to have things in places that I don't meet him. And even going into fatherhood with that expectation perhaps will help me find other resources and other men that can help guide him that aren't me, and not to be jealous about that or not to be upset about that, but actually be, that's a real bold fatherhood leadership move to make, where it's like, I can't teach you everything. Because I even think in ancient cultures, it was often when men were initiated or boys were initiated into manhood, it was like their uncle and their whatever that took them away to do that. It wasn't, their father often wasn't a direct part of that process from things that I've heard. I don't know the validity of that, but because he actually needs to be separated, not only from the mother, but the father as well, to become his own man rather than just in the image of his father, which so many men try to replicate for better or for worse with the shadows and with all the stuff.
As a marriage and family therapist, one thing I realized over the years is most people they try to parent either exactly the same way their parents did or the exact opposite of the way their parents did. And I always would tell parents that's not the most effective way to parent, either doing the exact same or exact opposite, because every child is unique and every child, has their unique needs. And I'd also tell every parent, you're going to fuck your kids up. Mm-hmm. Everybody does. And the real issue is not how do you fuck your kids up, it's how do you recover from those fuck ups. Because I've worked with people in their 60s and 70s who have parents still living. And I've asked them before, if your father came to you today and said, I'm sorry, I see the mistakes I made, I was less than an ideal parent, I love you, I'd like your forgiveness, but I just want you to know how much I love you. I've asked people in their 60s and 70s, how would you respond? And they break into tears. Yeah. So like it's never too late to recover from those pieces. And, I still, when stuff comes up with my son, he's 38 now, I still go to him and I'll ask him, how did that affect you? Because I know that was less than an ideal situation. And I think because he knows he and I can talk about any of those things, it doesn't stick in him. If you don't know you can talk about it with your dad or your mother, or whatever, it stays stuck. And you feel like, I can't let it out. I can't tell them. And so even just giving your kid access to say, we gave our kids permission. You can say, you can't say, I hate you, Dad, but you can say, Dad, I'm mad at you. And we taught them how to express the emotion without, doing the things that sever relationship.
Yeah. Feeling, I think, safe enough to bring anything to your parents, which is a pretty unusual dynamic to have in a lot of families. At least it was in mine. Where
it's not real common.
My way is kind of the way it is, and any argument about that, I'm already in the wrong position as child, right? And so meeting more eye to eye on a real level feels something that I definitely want to imbue in the relationships with my future children. I'm curious, when you were speaking, you said you didn't talk to your dad. Did you get to reconcile that before he passed, or was that something you had to work out on your own?
Yeah, I'm grateful that I reached that place of being at peace before he had a stroke.
Okay.
That was in 2009. And I didn't see him frequently. And when I did see him, we'd go get a donut and a cup of coffee, and he'd kind of tell me the same stories he told me the last time. And he wasn't that old. I think he was 78 when he passed away. Yeah. That's getting up there. But, yeah. But in a way, that was good to kind of just see this is the limit of his bandwidth. Yeah. This is as far as he opens, because he doesn't know anything beyond this. When I kind of see that just same thing, every 6 months when we get together and have a cup of coffee or whatever, it was the same. I thought, that's all he's capable of. And I had compassion for that, and I wasn't condescending in any way. I just thought
Kind of
that's
meet
all
him
he's
where he's
got.
at.
That's
Yeah.
all he got.
And love him for that.
And and if that's all he's got, that's all he's got. How can I expect more if he doesn't have more than that? And that really is what gave me the peace and let me just focus on what I was grateful for. And around this time, I got connected with a cousin of mine, also a Dr. Glover, Danny Glover. So, I got a famous cousin, but he's in Tennessee. I didn't even know he existed until I was in my 50s, because his father and my father are brothers, but his dad was 20 years older than my dad. So he'd already left the house before my dad was even born.
Wow.
So my dad didn't grow up around his older brother. So I didn't even know this cousin existed. But he also shared with me what my father's family was like. My father, of course, was the youngest by far of his siblings. But apparently my grandfather was very physically abusive, grandmother very unloving, and my cousin's father was physically abusive. A sister of theirs who I had met, an aunt of mine, another cousin, her daughter, told me that her mom was physically abusive. And my dad wasn't. I mean, he was abusive verbally, and which is painful. But when he passed and I spoke at his memorial, it's just a small memorial in my folks' home, I was the only one of my four siblings that wanted to say anything about my dad. And he could be a difficult human being. He could be very angry and bitter and shaming and moody and self-centered, and all the things I tried not to be, but found out, oh, I'm more like him than I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that I was able to say about him, in all of the things about him that was difficult to be in relationship with him, he had upped the game of what he got from his father. And I said, I hope maybe that in some ways I'd up the game of from my father. And at that time, my son, my granddaughter was probably 3 at that time, and I just see him being the greatest dad. So it was really good to know what my father's childhood was like,
Yeah.
and to know what he dealt with,
Mm-hmm.
and that also gave me more forgiveness. And I've done, I know in John's program we've done things around the father wound, and I've led these kind of exercises with people where I go with guys and we go back and imagine their father at a young age. What was he like in his 30s? What was he like in his 20s? See him. What clothes is he wearing? What was he doing? How was he living? What was it like when he was, early 20s, teenager, early adolescent, little boy, baby? And start picturing your dad as a baby. He was a a helpless, perfect little baby at some point. And almost every man I've spoken to, when they talk out loud about their father wound and even grandfather wound, there's wars involved, men going off to war, losing fathers in war. There's often addiction involved in there. There's also often physical abuse, abandonment,
Poverty, like all sorts of
poverty,
things.
extreme poverty, hard labor. And it makes you wonder how any of our fathers or grandfathers grew up with any kind of personal adjustment whatsoever.
And they didn't have the resources like we do today, or the stigma was so heavy around, getting help and mental health and
Back
therapy.
then, you just survived.
You just grit your
And
teeth.
you went off to war because that's what you did.
Yeah.
And, you got married and had kids because that's what you did.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it amazes me that our fathers have done as well as they did, considering maybe what their fathers went through and their grandfathers went through. I think most of us grow up with so many comforts. We just go, oh yeah. This world isn't that tough. But you just go back pre-World War II. It was tough. It was a tough life.
Yeah, I had an experience. I did the Hoffman process. Are you familiar with it? It's kind of
I've heard of it, but I've never done it.
Yeah, it was pretty profound. It was basically lineage kind of healing, and it's all about your father and mother and your family of origin. And you do a lot of visualization meditations, and one of them is that exact thing, kind of this regressive thing where you're having a conversation with your parents when they're children, and you also do it as your child. And it's really interesting because you recognize Yeah, like you said, I've never thought of my mom or my dad as a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old where they're just helpless. And then
dealing with whatever they dealt
exactly.
with as
And some things I know that they dealt with, and some things I didn't. And one of the things that I was struggled with was both my grandparents have passed now on my father's side, and they were very, very, for the most part, very sweet and kind people. And I wonder how my dad like got some of these tendencies from them. But what I recognized during that process was you're different when you're raising kids at 30 than when you're a grandparent at 65, 70. My dad has softened a lot in his elder years, and how he treats his grandchildren is totally different than how he parented us because he softens. And we forget that too. Like, oh, our grandparents were young and working through their stuff, and we're going through all of those types of challenges that you mentioned, perhaps even more so in that generation, a couple generations back. And life tends to, I mean, some people get very calcified, but generally people soften around their children, around their grandchildren as they get older. But we don't see that. So we're like, why were my grandparents so kind? And then, my father was kind of a jerk sometimes. And now I'm seeing he's very soft, and my brother is kind of like being a jerk sometimes, and then he's going to soften. And it's all this, it's all perspective, right? Yeah. And it takes some humility and also some width to go back and really look like, oh yeah, man, me trying to raise like my dad had 3 kids at 34, how old I am now, I would have been a couple years old, and doing what he had to do to put food on the table and everything he had to go through. Like, and me imagining holding all that and a marriage and everything else and all these responsibilities, of course, man, he did a great job. Right, there's so much to be thankful for and grateful for. I had food, I had clothing, I was safe, I had education, he took me on amazing trips all the time and stuff like that, and that was 90% of the experience was positive. But we have this tendency, I think it's our human nature, to get so, especially when you get into personal work and development work, you can get so singularly focused on all the ways you were traumatized and hurt and how things went wrong. But I think as I get older and get more perspective, I'm immensely grateful, and I talk to other men who don't have good relationships with their father, and it really shows. Some of them are, you can really tell how there's this missing or this wound in them that is really impacting their relationships with other men, of course, with women, or the projection that they put on other men as a father wound and stuff like that. I noticed that really big when we were in MLT. Some guys just, you could see how they were just blasting John with this father wound, and they were so unaware of it, right?
And it's helpful though, believe it or not. For example, the whole kind of psychoanalytic view of therapy is that the therapist is this kind of blank slate, and he plays that role so people can project all of that stuff. So, as a leader, as a coach, and you may not be at an age yet where you start getting that, but at some point, as an authority figure, you'll start getting people's authority figure issues. Yeah. And, I have to always remind myself when, I trigger somebody and throughout this weekend, a lot of guys came up to me and asked me questions and, shared how I'd helped their life. And, a couple people came up to clear with me. And I was always so grateful when they did it, because it's good practice, number one. And where else can they go do that? And I know I just, one guy came to clear with me because I've been married 3 times, and he says, I don't think you respect the sacredness of marriage. And I go, tell me what that means to you. So we talked in a great conversation, and I think it was really meaningful and helpful that he could come clear that out, because again, we are going to project that stuff. And I've worked with men long enough. You see it, you're going to keep seeing it. I think the very fact that you guys got 40 guys together in a weekend workshop, and I'm going to guess the majority of them did not know what they were getting themselves into. No. What was this about? And this is one of the reasons I love working with men, is I just assume most guys have father wounds. We project that onto other men. I've heard men say that for so long. I don't feel safe with men. I talked to one guy this weekend. He goes, I'd rather be at a co-ed workshop. I connect better with the feminine energy in that. He goes, I don't feel any connection here with these guys. And I said, well, try this. Try, as you look in men's eyes doing the practice, see the feminine in them, and see if you can create a sense of polarity of your masculine with their feminine. And he and I chatted a couple times, and by the end of the workshop, he goes, yeah, this was worth the investment. I'm glad I did it. I still don't think he'd probably sign up for another men's program, But I've just seen that for so long that we do project whatever our father wound is onto other men and assume other men, and we'll always find somebody, oh, that guy right there, and we don't even know we're projecting onto him. But the beauty of it is, if there's a clear container, if there's a process for doing that work, and I shared, and I've always joked, after my first year in the men's program where I met you.
I was going to ask you about this. I know exactly where you're going because I wanted you to share this.
I quickly realized just how judgmental I am. And, I often lead with, I'm a judgmental motherfucker. And now I can watch it. I can just watch my judgments. And I know the kind of context they're often going to come up in. And I get in the program, and, if it didn't really matter what it was, judgment would come up about different men in different ways. This was during the time when a lot of men had the big bushy beards and just, they spent more time on their hair than the average woman. And, you can see my judgment's coming out. and I'm going.
Easy to say when you don't have any hair, right?
Yeah, exactly. Fuck. I'm going, what the fuck is this? All these really soft young dudes and all this, and I noticed me having judgment, and I noticed it would leak out in some pokes, in some jabs, and just avoiding. And I thought, I don't want to do that. And I think what happened is maybe I did, through time, a practice with, some of these people and looked at them eye to eye. And there's one guy, I won't mention his name, but he was my first year, so you would have met him, and then second year as well. All tatted up and just kind of a grizzly guy, lives out in the woods.
I was thinking about this, man.
And I mean, he triggered me so much on that first retreat that we had. And then when we were out in the desert, and, by the time that year was over, every time I'd see him, I go get a hug and feel his beard rub my face. And I just love this guy. And, like with my father, I could see his shortcomings, his struggles, his demons, and just loved him anyway. So I quickly learned through that first year is that if I notice a judgment coming up of any kind, whether it's about his beard or how long it takes him to groom his hair or his, Burning Man clothes that he wears or, whatever it is, I would make a point to go get to know him, either get on Zoom with him or at a workshop, just go talk to him, just find out who he is with curiosity. And I found that quickly, and you can see it like in these weekend workshops even. Everybody's there hesitant, and by the time the weekend's over, they don't want to leave. And they're hugging each other. It's like they've been frat buddies for 40 years. And it is just so amazing how these processes can speed that up. But also, I think just a willingness to go, if I've got judgment, I'm going to own my judgment and go and find out who this man really is. Because I'm sure my judgments don't match who this person is. And yeah, he's human. He's imperfect. But it's funny how I can go from being judgmental and not even, want to give a guy time of day to just considering him a deep friend that I'm grateful for, that, I just want to hug every time I see him. So why I love men's work is that you can go do that. And I'll watch men go from being kind of scared rabbits at the beginning of a program like you guys ran. And at the end of it, they're big, they're strong, they're connected, they're holding each other, they're laughing, they're loving each other. And I know for me, I just get so nurtured from that, of just having that depth of connection with men. That's why I keep coming back and saying yes to every opportunity to go connect deeply with men. And now, doesn't matter where my father was imperfect. I have so many good men in my life that they level me up in ways that my father couldn't. And again, even, the things that we don't know or don't see about our fathers. I had judgment of my dad that he was a mailman his entire life. He was going to school to be an engineer, and then my sister's born, then I was born, so he couldn't do that. So he got a job at the post office. And he never went into management, did the same job for 30 years, retired at 55, couldn't wait to retire. And I thought, he was an intelligent man. Why did he sell himself short? Why didn't he live up to his potential? And it wasn't until just 2 or 3 years ago, it dawned on me. He came to like 80 to 90% of the ball practices I had. Soccer, football, baseball, from 8, 9 years old, pee wee baseball through high school. He often had to work Saturdays, so he couldn't like coach, but and would miss some games. But he was at all the practices. Right? I hear so many guys say, "My dad never came to one of my
Just
games.
Too busy building the thing that
Never
you're
came
kind
to
of
one of my games."
resenting,
And it dawned on me, okay, maybe he kept a job that he never liked, that let him get off work at 3:30 in the afternoon. He could make my practices, and he took us camping and he took us fishing. And I thought, this judgment that I had of why didn't he live up to his full potential, maybe he sacrificed that intentionally, consciously, because it was important to him to be a family man and be involved with, his children's activities. And he was. I had a lot of friends, their dads never came to anything. So even the judgments we have, sometimes we got to flip them around and go, wait a minute, I had judgment of this, but the truth was he sacrificed his purpose because it was more important to him to have that sense of being a family man and a father, maybe ways that his father wasn't.
Yeah, it's super powerful. There's a gift even in that, and that's what I'm hearing in all this and all the judgments. If we're with them long enough, or if we don't get totally railroaded by like we're being righteous about what we think about that person or our fathers, there's usually, I don't think if you didn't judge me and make a conversation with me for how I looked, I don't think we'd be sitting here right now having the depth of relationship and friendship that we have. So, and I had that with, we were talking about him this past weekend, Jonah, like,
Oh, yeah.
I had so much judgment about him when we first got into EMLT, and I was telling some guys this past weekend that were having they're in our program together, and they've been in conflict with each other over the program, and they've been really clean about it and clearing, but they still feel that rub because they're more alike than they're different. And they're realizing like, damn it, like this guy is he's rigid just like me, right? Yeah. And they're starting to see that. And Jonah and I remember I was telling guys we had this like 12-hour or 11-hour drive from Shasta to Seattle and we did it together in his car because I was flying out of Seattle, and we were just at it for like 10 hours in the car, just going at it. And now Jonah,
but he does it with respect and love, right?
He does it with respect and love.
If you want to have a good argument with somebody, have it with Jonah.
But I felt like on every spectrum of life, we were on opposite sides.
Yeah.
Jonah is, bar none, one of my favorite friends, closest people to me, someone I could rely on with anything. It took us a good year and a half to hash everything out and finally just realize that we're actually very, very similar in a lot of ways. And so you never get that opportunity if you don't learn how to bring kind of conscious awareness and respect and do that work around that kind of stuff. I went through my life, I can only speak for myself, and I can see it in a lot of other men. You even see it to the men showing up at the beginning of the weekend. They're just so judging. They're judging everyone. They're judging the practice, the whole container. Those are usually the guys that do the biggest 180 at the end of the weekend. Oh, I love you, bro. They're hugging everyone. They're crying.
But there usually has to be some kind of big break of some way, though. It does. Most of them don't just ease into that place. Something happens where finally cracked. Yeah. They get cracked open. They let go. Something big comes up, and they get held. And that's usually makes the difference. Is they get held physically, emotionally. And people that they were having judgment of are now like holding them and, helping them wipe snot off, their nose. And it's kind of like, oh, you're a good guy.
Yeah. I don't think most of those guys have never let anybody do that for them. Right. And so, yeah, just super beautiful that even coming into the container with the first night, we had guys just stay with each other with eye contact and move around the room. Mm-hmm. And so many of the men couldn't even hold a gaze with other men. It's just so shocking, really. Like they can't even look at another man in the eyes for a couple minutes without, or even moments without kind of fritzing out and having to move and laugh and eject from the situation. And by the end of the weekend, they're all sitting like stoic, like staring at each other, and just it's so powerful. So I get so nourished by that, even though we're putting on 12-hour days, 13-hour days, and on my feet all day on that terrible concrete floor and those metal chairs.
It's a beautiful concrete.
Beautiful concrete. It was beautiful. Floor. As long as you're not standing on it for hours and hours. No, the space was epic. I mean, the retreat was. I don't think it could have. logistically or programming wise gone any better. But I it just ended yesterday, and I'm feeling so filled up today, like exhausted but full. And a lot of the men, the
sure.
WhatsApp thread is blowing up with guys that are just like, that changed my life. Finally have a brotherhood. I finally have friends. I mean, if you look at the statistics out there, I think it's in like the 60th percentile of men who say they don't have one friend. Like they don't have one man that they would call a friend in their life.
Right.
It's absurd.
You know, yeah, you just see more and more statistics that there really is an epidemic of isolation and loneliness in men. And we talked some about that this weekend, and just the effects that has on men, physically, emotionally, psychologically, their health, their well-being. Because we men were wired, we evolved to have depth of connection with other men. So nowadays men either go alone because they can, guys can get off by themselves and just, they got their technology and they can do that. Or we go seek connection from females, from women. And that's understandable, but our forefathers didn't go seek connection from females. That just, men and women did not really start living in close proximity with each other until after World War II. When men went off to fight, women who'd always been at home now went into factories to build the munitions and whatever was needed to fight wars. The men came back and the women stayed. And then now, of course, men and women work together. And I'm not making a judgment about that in any way, other than men have never been taught, or we've forgotten, throughout all of human history, we got our depth of connection from men, not from women. And I think because of desiring sexual access, of course, and a partner, and maybe to be a dad and have a family, we go through that pathway of trying to find women to connect with. But like this one guy, like I said, I talked to this at the workshop. He said, I just would rather be around women. I go, I used to be that way too. Until about my mid-30s, about the age he was, I said, I went to any event. I looked for the table, the group, wherever, an empty place around the women. And then when I just started my own personal recovery, got into a 12-step group, a men's group, and started realizing this is not serving me. Because when I get with women, I've got these covert contracts. Oh, I'll be the good guy. I'll listen. I'll pay attention, and then you'll think I'm special or value me, or maybe even something will come of it. And it wasn't clean. It wasn't clear, and it wasn't serving me. And I don't think I was serving them in any real way. And, when I finally started connecting with men, so since about my mid-30s, if I go into any public space, I look for the guys. Who are the guys to connect with? And that's just, I think that's what fills our bucket as men, that now we have space to connect deeply with women. But, even when I was a marriage therapist, I tell men all the time, a healthy relationship is built on the foundation of good guy friends.
Yeah.
Because, nowadays, if a guy's in a relationship and he, his wife's pissed at him or nagging him or withdrawn or, this, that, or the other thing. And if your woman is your best friend, as, we've kind of gone through that phase. Hopefully we're coming out the other side of that where, we're supposed to be soulmates and best friends and everything with our partners.
Yeah.
Okay, your best friend is acting pissy with you. Who are you going to go talk to?
Yeah.
Who are you going to go get connection from? Who are you going to get support from? You can't. Your best friend's not talking to you. Your best friend thinks you're a jerk and an asshole, right? And so we just need that good foundation. And I remember in my second marriage when I started connecting with men. Back then, we'd just take a road trip and go watch baseball games somewhere in the country. And my second wife rarely wanted to have sex. And she was very critical and judgmental of me in many ways. And I'd come home from these retreats with a guy, and it wasn't even, masculine embodiment. It was just watching baseball. Guys just having fun being with guys.
Yep.
I'd come home and she would say, I'm always so attracted to you when you get back from these trips.
Yes.
And I know my wife now, who is always attracted to me no matter what, when men come to our home, when they come to my workshops, or when they just come visit, or when I go do these workshops, I think like a lot of women, she has a little anxiety of, or what's really going to happen, or what is he up to something? Men, because most women think when men go away, they're up to something, and often they are, unfortunately. And I think my wife's kind of figured out, that these are good men that my husband's hanging out with, and she's the exact same way. She just is so lit up by who I am when I'm around men. And, she's been sending me messages this week. You're so big. You're so amazing. You're a great man. I'm so proud of you. And if we've got that connection with men, it just brings that energy and supercharges the relationship with the woman.
Yeah.
And then when we're struggling because she's, withdrawn or bringing up the past or projecting her stuff, and we're all this, and we're going, if we've got our connection with men, we can hang in there. We can deal with it rather than thinking, I got to run. I got to get out of here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to share the same thing. Like the best times that I have in my relationship, the deepest intimacy, the most polarity, like just the memories that I can think of where it was like, wow, that was a really beautiful period of our relationship, is always right when I come back from a retreat or have been in nature for a long time alone or out of contact. It's like that old absent makes the heart grow fonder, but it's also like being absent with men makes the heart grow fonder, because I'm so full. I feel like that stone Buddha or like the mountain where I'm just like, cool, I'm so full. All I actually want to do is give right now. Like I'm so excited to give. I'm so nourished. And so many of us, like you're saying, we seek nourishment in the relationship, but masculine and feminine nourishment is the same. There's a certain nourishment she can give me,
of course,
her touch, her love, her heart, that's totally different. But if that's the only, it's like one dimensional. If that's the only nourishment that I'm going for, I'll never feel full. And it took me a long time to realize that in many, many failed relationships where I'm like, this person isn't giving me what I need.
Right.
Where is it? And I honestly, that's what led me initially to a men's group, because I read Way of the Superior Man, and it made all this stuff unlocked there because I didn't know anything about masculine and feminine dynamics. And, I joined a men's group, and I just intuitively knew, like, there's something I had good men in my life and good relationships in college and buddies, but drinking, hitting the bong, whatever it was, going and partying, but there was some depth I was missing. And as soon as I started, like that first John Wineland retreat was the first like full on retreat. I had been in kind of a casual men's group before that, but I came back and I was so full. I was like beaming and radiating. And like you were saying, the puppies were licking my hands and the cats were meowing and the birds were landing on my shoulder.
So attractive to the
women
feminine.
were just, oh yeah, totally.
When I experienced this, and I tell men this, and men have a hard time believing what you're saying and what I'm saying. The feminine. And the feminine's everything that's not nailed down. So it is women, dogs, cats, babies, money, opportunity, adventure. It's everything. When a man is full, and that fullness comes from that connection and being in nature, connecting with self, connecting with men, connecting with spirit, that fills us. The feminine is highly attracted to that. Most men think we got to go out and make things happen, knock on closed doors, knock the doors down, high achieve. I'm in a place, I think if you just keep doing this work that fills you, all the goodies come. All the good things come. We're talking with guys this weekend about tattoos. A lot of tatted up guys there. And I said, I think we're talking about, thinking about another tattoo, thinking about maybe a blackbird. You got a blackbird on your hand. Here. One for my father. And I thought maybe a rhododendron flower for my mother, but I had no idea what to do. So anyway, I get to my Airbnb in Austin yesterday afternoon. And then in the evening, I'm going to go out and take a walk. And I go down, and right below it, there's a haircut place. And there's this other place. And is this an art gallery? Because there's art all over the walls. But what I noticed first, there was a Virgin Guadalupe statue in the window. And I'm from Mexico, or I live in Mexico, so I see a lot. And I thought there was some crucifix art on the wall. And there's a crucifix art, crucified Jesus with the Sacred Heart. And I've got the same picture on my wall in my house in Mexico that I bought years ago. So and the door says appointment only. And I open it, and there was a guy in there, and it's a bunch of like massage tables. And I asked, can I come in? And he's looking at me, and I go, it's just can I look at your art? And he goes, well, we're just appointment only. And I go, appointments for what? He goes, it's a tattoo parlor. And so I said, can I look at your art? I said, I just got back. I've been at a men's retreat and this and that. And so he and I ended up talking probably for over an hour.
Wow.
And he's asking what I do and what I teach and about the work. And I'm talking about the crucifix art. He collects crucifix art too. And he's got so much great art. And we're talking about tattoos. And I said, I'm just talking about tattoos. And I said, but I don't know what I want. I don't want to force it. But I said, I've got this idea of a blackbird and a rhododendron flower. And he goes, I don't know what that is. So he looks it up, and we're talking about his heritage is Mexican. He's born in Texas, but his grandparents were Mexican. And we're just talking, and he brings up this picture of a raven by James Audubon. And then he said, he can imagine it could be, and he said, we could start and work it here. And I said, when can we get it done? And he goes, I'm booked through September. But the point was, I didn't go looking for a tattoo parlor. I didn't go looking for a tattoo. We'd had conversations with a lot of tattooed men this weekend. And here I'm led by some icons of, the Guadalupe and the crucifix. And all of a sudden, I've got a great tattoo guy with a great idea to put the raven mix in with the flowers on my arm here. And maybe I'll come back in September and do that.
Yeah.
So there's something about when we're a fullness and we're just open to things coming, they come. And we don't have to make things happen. But what I was going to say about when the second retreat I did in that EMLT program, you'd only come to that first workshop. So this first year, we went to the Netherlands. And we stayed at a retreat center. And we ate, it's either vegetarian or vegan the whole time.
You're always eating vegan things, vegan sushi, vegan.
Well, I don't know what that's about. But, and this tattoo guy yesterday, he's vegan. I said, well, you go to restaurants around here? He goes, I'm vegan. I go, well, I'm okay with vegan if it's good. Yeah. Then he shows me this place is all fried vegan foods, like Kentucky Fried Chicken, but it's all vegan. I said, why do vegans always try to turn their food into like real food? Yeah. Why can't it just be vegetables? Beans and vegetables and rice. What's wrong with that? So anyway, so we come back into Amsterdam, and I think about a dozen of us guys who had all been this retreat. Somebody made a reservation at an Argentinian steakhouse, and we go, and we get this table outside, and it was summertime, so a lot of other people are sitting outside. And we're just, the owner just took to us, and he's, bringing, bottles and carafes of red wine, and we're eating just, lots of steak, and just guys having we're so close, we're so full, and we're oblivious to everybody around us. And I start telling, the guys around me, notice all of the feminine energy we're attracting. And the guys are going, where? What are you talking about? Just kind of like, they don't even know what I meant. All right, see that woman sitting right there? I said, she's with her boyfriend. I said, maybe boyfriend, maybe not. I don't know. But she was with she's on a date or something. Pardon? Yeah.
She's in a group of people?
In a group, 4 people at a table. And they said, I said, she's sending us all kinds of sexual energy, invitation. He goes, why? And the guy's going, you're drunk. I go, no, I'm not actually drunk. And I said, he goes, her back's turned to us. I said, yes, but she's on one hip. The other hip is hunched, and her butt is like, I said, that is primate invitation. No, you're just making that up. And I said, no, I said, we're attracting energy all around us. And the guys they wanted to argue with me. And we had a waitress who was probably 20, young woman. And I said, yeah, the waitress has, been wanting our attention too. Oh, no, she's just doing her job. And I said, I'll be right back. I went in, asked, I think I already knew the woman's name. And I said, give me your number. I want to call you. She just wrote her number down on a card and gave it to me. Went back out, put the card in front of him, said, the waitress just gave me your phone number. She's going, how'd you do that, man? I go, I didn't have to do anything. She was already opened. She was already there. And then, so, they're still wanting to argue. So then we go to this bar that had some live music and wasn't very busy yet. It wasn't too late yet. And I'm standing with one guy there, and he's looking as dorky as could be with kind of a backpack on and this and that. And we're in a bar, and a bunch of the guys are at the bar. And there's 2 women right behind us, 2 young women, 20 or something. And they're kind of just back there dancing. And I said, those women want our attention. He goes, nah, you're making that up. That they're behind. I said, okay, let's just slowly just step back a little bit. And they did, and they kind of moved in front of us. And one woman is just dancing in front of us, and the other one's kind of, jutting a hip out. And I go, yeah, they're feeling the fullness of our energy. Yeah. We don't have to, you go, no, you're making that up. Women like that don't go for, guys like me. And I said, give her your camera, your phone. Hand her your phone and say, we're visiting, and ask if they take a picture. They turned, they lit up and said, where are you guys from? They started a conversation. Yeah. Just I said, give her your phone and say, take a picture of us. And now all of a sudden they're just, like this, dancing, and I went over to the bar and I said, you talk to them.
Told you so.
But it was just, we men, we consume so much information. We watch podcasts, and now we men are all into these podcasts of these high achievers, 10xing everything and achieving this, and don't leave anything on the table, and just and I get bored with that actually really quick, because the truth is, if you're living in alignment with your purpose, your destiny, you're saying yes to fate, you're saying yes to whatever comes, yes to opportunity, you don't have to supercharge anything. Just such interesting doors open, whether it's a tattoo shop that you weren't looking for, whether it was, women sending you energy that you weren't even noticing or trying to hit on, whatever it is. If we get that fullness of connection, and again, I think that combination of being in nature, connecting deeply with men, open to the spiritual, to the unknown, whatever that is, and just being filled, stuff just comes. The stuff, I think, is there all the time, no matter what. We just don't see it.
It's just knocking on the door for us.
It's just there. Well, often we're pounding on that closed door. I want that woman. She's hot. I want her. And all these other open doors are out here of women paying, sitting in this, like the guy last night. Like, how'd you meet your wife? I said, I was walking down the street in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I heard a voice say, hola, señor, want a massage? I said, no, hoy, tal vez mañana. I kept walking, and I thought, I liked her voice. Nothing more. I didn't remember what she looked like. I liked her voice. I turned around, went back, and got a massage. We've been married 7.5 years now. Just because I said yes to something energetically that called me. And Lupita loves to tell the story that she was standing out in front of the massage place, because that's what they do there, with her gay companion, that was a coworker. And they saw me coming up the street on the other side of the street walking. And this is a tourist town, so lots of tourists. And her friend turned to her and said, do you see that? And Lupita said, he's mine. And her gay friend said, no, he's mine. And she goes, we're going to find out, see, gay or straight. So, so she got to be the one to say, hola, señor, want a massage? And, I'm straight. I went with her. But she said it was like the hand of God turned her head and said, look. She said, I've never had that experience. So what if those kinds of experiences are happening all the time?
I know.
All the time. But we're so caught up. I came out. I've rented a Ford F-150, and I had to park it out in the street because the parking lot in the Airbnb condo the space is too small. So I come out this morning, running a couple minutes late. I got a big box here, comes closed, got my backpack, and as soon as I look, there's a Volkswagen SUV parked that much from my front bumper, and there's a big truck unloading over on the other side of the road. I go, I hope that other car isn't still behind me. It is. It's that far. There's no way I'm getting that Ford F-150 extended cab out, because and the SUV in front of me is like blocking even an entryway. And I thought, what am I going to do? I thought, okay, the door's open. I don't have to get and go. And so I looked around, thought, I don't think they're in this business. I think they're in a little pick quick or whatever the little thing is right here. I tried rocking the car to see if I could set the alarm off, thinking, well, maybe they got an app that their alarm would go off. It couldn't get the alarm to go off. And so I walked around, went in front of the quick pick, and there was like a crowd of about 40 people out there just standing and talking. They had some kind of group, I don't know what. And I just said, anybody got a Volkswagen, blah, 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 SUV? And one goes, yeah, it's mine. I said, well, you got me blocked in. I need you to move. I thought it was okay. I thought I'm parallel parked. I said, you are parallel parked. I said, I just can't get
2
out.
inches from my bumper, yeah.
But the point was, there's this part of me that felt this initial panic. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Yeah. And I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's going to be okay. It will work out. And I even thought, well, was there even some opportunity in that, that I didn't walk through the open door? I didn't think so, but it's just, she pulled forward, she backed up. Maybe her opportunity was she didn't have to block the entranceway anymore to that other parking lot. She got to pull back. But what if all of life just works like that?
Yeah.
If we are open to it and willing to say yes. I had an old friend who's passed away, a gay friend in Puerto Vallarta, used to say, it's a sin to say no when you should have said yes.
It reminds me of that masculine John was saying on the weekend. He said the masculine, well, how did he frame it? The masculine, it's like the masculine practice is to be yes.
To be a yes. To be a yes.
Life. And it's reminds me of this happened just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm living up in Western North Carolina now, and there's a lot of rivers there. And even when I was living out in BC and in Washington, I always wanted to learn how to fly fish. And it was one of those things that a lot of guys, when I was younger, in my 20s, did, but I never got out with them. But they would always talk how complex it was, and you really need to learn all these tying flies and the gear, and there's you need all this special stuff. And I was even recently looking at guides. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just pay for a half day or full day guided. Someone will teach me how to do it. They'll have the gear. I'll see if I even want to do it and like it before I invest in it, and they'll know where to go, and maybe I'll catch some fish. So I'm looking and I'm browsing around, and I just don't really pull the trigger on it because there's so many different guys you can go with, and I don't know, I was just kind of hesitant. And anyway, I ended up getting a new barber recently, and he cut my hair once, and we didn't really talk that much that time. And the second time I went in, I just started chatting him up, and I was telling him how I went on this backcountry survival course right out in Utah, and then the other barber was there, and he didn't have a client, and we're just having this conversation. We're talking about national parks in southern Utah and hiking and camping. And he's like, the guy cutting my hair was like, man, I would really love to do something like that. And I was like, yeah. And then we started talking about fishing, because I was saying, yeah, we did a bit of hand fishing there. I didn't catch anything. He's like, yeah, I'm a big fisher. I love fly fishing. And I said, oh, cool. I would love to get into fly fishing. Do you have any recommendations for a guide? And he said, yeah, I got this guy. I'll send you his Instagram. Give me your Instagram. I'll send you his Instagram. So he connects with me on Instagram. He cuts my hair. I leave. He's chatting to me after, and he said, you know what, man, why don't I just take you out fly fishing, and you don't have to pay $400 or $500 to go for the half day. I've got an extra rod. I've got some gear. And so this guy that cuts my hair, he says, when do you want to go? And he says, how about this Sunday? And it's Friday. So it's a few days. I was like, sure, why not? Let's go. Sunday,
say yes.
I caught 3 fish. He takes me out fly fishing. We meet at 8 a.m. He caught none. I caught 3. He's giving me his rod. He gets me all hooked up, shows me how the cast, everything like that. A guy that I would never associate with normally, totally different lifestyle, someone that I wouldn't walk up on the street and be like, hey bro, let's go have a drink or hang out or whatever it is. We end up actually having this really deep connection, and then at the end of the day, he gives me a piece of gear. He gives me his whole tackle kind of thing, and he's like, I want you to have this, because when I learned, someone gave this to me, and this can be your first piece of gear, and I can hook you up with, I got pro deals, I can hook you up with the prices.
Isn't life good like that?
Amazing. And now I'm fly fishing. I didn't have to find a guide. I didn't have to pay any money. This guy's great. He's a new friend of mine. He's a fishing buddy, and he's fishing every weekend. So he's like, anytime you want to go, man.
So you're fly fishing. I'm going to have a tattoo.
Exactly.
All because, in a sense, we just opened ourselves up to that, and it's there. It's there.
Yeah, and I think that's so. It's in the mundane that so many beautiful opportunities can happen. To your point, I'm so I was even on social media. I'm just so sick of the fast cuts and the imagery and the 10x and the get the whatever and this, that, and the other, and you got to have 8-figure months and whatever people are going crazy about all the time. The new strategy in the funnel and I get 100 emails
every
a day.
Time somebody goes, you got to check this person out.
Yeah.
They took their company in 6 months to 100,000 a month, and I'm going, yeah, okay.
What's much more enthralling to me and interesting than any of that is those little opportunities that transpire just by having a conversation and staying open and
being curious.
Yeah. And he, I don't often tell people explicitly what I do, sometimes because it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
But he asked
I don't even try to explain to my wife what I do.
Exactly. So. And he asked me that day, and I was like, oh, I develop men's leadership is basically what I said, kind of. And he was curious. He was like, well, what it gives you the right, not the right to do that, but he's like, what makes you capable of doing that? And I said, well, it's not me that's the leader. I just help people, and I started getting more and more into it. And that's really when the conversation happened, because of his curiosity too. And then I judged him to be a man that was kind of lacking depth and everything, like all these kind of things. And I recognized after we had a pretty deep conversation that I was totally off the mark. And one thing that I've just on this point is I've noticed is kind of circling back with those judgments is I often have this judgment of men is one thing that I carry, that they're not going to understand what I'm into. They don't know what I'm up to. They're not that deep. They don't do what I do, kind of thing. And I still talk to them and I'm cordial and friendly, but what I've been humbled by recently was there's a lot of men out there that are actually pretty deep cats that might not be in this work or in this thing, but once I get talking to them, they're very interested and very connected because they understand. It's like they have that, they might have not have the language for it or can articulate, but they have that yearning and that understanding of like, oh, I understand why you would do that work, or that sounds really fascinating, or maybe one day I'd love to come do something like that with you.
So Carlos, the tattoo guy I'm talking to yesterday, he asked the same thing. Well, what do you do? Or what, I was at a retreat, what, and they want to know. And he said, well, I said, I've worked with men. I've written a book. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy about it. He goes, oh, we were just talking about that the other day. I said, about nice guys? And I explained that, they want to make everybody happy. They hide their faults or flaws. They don't end up not being happy. And so, when I left, I said, I'm gonna be here a few days. I said, I'm gonna give you a copy of my book. He goes, I'd really like that. So here was a guy, tattoo artist. I find out he's former heroin addict for 20 years. I think he's been to prison. He kind of hinted it,
alluded at
possibly. That. He had a T-shirt on with a handgun on the T-shirt, and when I said, I'll give you a copy of my book, he said, I'd like that. And I said, and I'm coming back to get the tattoo. He lit up when we were talking. So. And just because I got curious, I said, well, what's your heritage? And, what about your parents and grandparents? Where are they from? And, we're talking about how'd you get curious in crucifix art? Just getting curious with people. It is just interesting what opens up with no agenda, not trying to make anything happen. And now all of a sudden you're fly fishing and,
you're getting tattoos.
I'm getting another tattoo that I didn't know what I was. I just even asked him, I said, look at me energetically. Here's what I've got. Here's what I've got. Where do we go next? What's needed? And he said, well, maybe having come down each outside arm, like, a cat, a tiger, something, it says they can kind of match, but not match. And then
I would love to see you with sleeves, man. That'd be cool. Yeah, I love that you're getting tattooed. What are you, 68, 60?
68.
68, and you're still getting tattooed, man. That's
maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Doors open.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful. And just to speak one more piece to that, kind of what you were saying earlier about the feminine, especially, I think we've moved beyond the peak pickup artist kind of generation or whatever, kind of, late or whatever, like 2008, 2012, kind of 15, that kind of seemed really high, like a really peak with all the pickup artist stuff on YouTube and the guys like with hidden cameras and doing this, and this is how you game, and this is how you that, and this is the phrases that you say, and
here's how you trick women into
that psychological game. And what we were talking the other day about creating content, like, okay, what are some like maybe mini courses or little teachings that we could have for men that are in the dating scene, right? And thinking that cultivation of that energy and that fullness is so much more. It is so genuine that you don't have to use any type of strategy, really. You're just like so deeply nourished, and it's so rare to come across men these days. Like I feel like the quality of men is degraded a lot. Like so many of them aren't even in half decent shape. They're addicted to porn. Their energy is way wrong and off, and they're hypersexualized and all this kind of stuff. And they think that like learning a few phrases or how to groom their hair or whatever like that is going to get them a woman, when the feminine is just feeling all of that, the textures underneath that. And they may find some success, but generally not with the quality of woman you'd want to enter a relationship with anyway. It's been my kind of read on that whole thing. And so I think for anyone listening or watching this, like if you really want to attract a great relationship and partner, or just good women around you in general, or good feminine energy, it's counterintuitive because it's getting around more men, like you were saying, just makes you more radiant to women. And like you're at the bar getting numbers from, whoever, the waitress or these girls kind of orbiting around y'all while you're there. Um, there's no faking that. Like you can't fake that energy. That's the thing. You
And we
can't put
weren't
it
trying
on.
to make it happen.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like you're so unattached to it, and that's why you get the outcome.
Well, I'll tell you another story. And my books on dating, or I call it conscious dating. Is it? They're not pickup. In fact, my Dating Essentials for Men book, I call it the Unpickup Guide to Connecting with Women. I actually think pickup's invasive, and I actually think it's demeaning to the man and the woman. Because basically, when guys do pickup, it's always based around one parameter: the woman's looks. Oh, she's hot. I want to talk to her. Well, now you've just demeaned her to a one-dimensional character based on her genetic inheritance or her implants or whatever, and it's kind of demeaning to the guy that goes, that's all that's all I can see her for is she's hot, and that will boost my ego, and that turns me on, and blah 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 blah. But I think that attraction versus approach, and to me, whatever you attract, to me, that's meaningful. I heard David Deida say at a workshop 15 plus years ago, and this phrase, it like hit me instantly with the truth of it, but also I had to ponder it a little bit. But it was simply this: he said, "Choose a woman who chooses you." And I thought, that fucking explains every problem I've ever had with women. I keep choosing women who haven't chosen me, or they chose me in the past, but they're no longer choosing me, and I'm trying to get them to choose me, but they quit choosing me a long time ago. We're still together, but they're no. And I thought, and so I've been teaching that to men, but you know what guys always do? Yeah, but the women that choose me, they're fat, they're old, they're ugly. And I'm going, I don't think you're actually seeing all of the open doors. Because no matter whether it's women or anything, we get these blinders on. I want that. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's hot. She's young. She's this. And what if there's all this other energy here? Beautiful, sexy, vibrant energy who wants to be with us, and she doesn't fucking know we exist. That's pounding on a closed door, and we do that in so many areas of life. I want that. I'm going to go pound on that closed door, and all the open doors are here. And just another example of things that most men will not believe. I went to a speed dating event years ago when I was single after my second divorce. And I knew a guy there. He was one of my clients, and I think he may have told me about it. So we did the speed dating event, and out of it, I got one, mutual match, and ended up, I went on that one date with that person, met another woman while waiting for that woman to show up, ended up dating the other woman for a while. So doors open. But so, I knew this guy. He knew a guy that were all at the dating thing. So after the speed dating event, 5 of us went out to a bar right next to the event, and we just went and had a guys' evening and chit chat. So we went to meet women, and we ended up connecting with a bunch of guys. So it was 5 of us. I was the youngest, and I was probably pushing 50 at that time. So they're all older than 50. And so we decided, let's get together once a month. So we did. We'd get together once a month, go to happy hour, do something, just go hang out, just to talk, connect. So we were in downtown Seattle in an area called Belltown, summertime, afternoon, maybe it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we were sitting right next to in this bar area with open windows that opened out to an outdoor seating area. And there were young people, adult, guys, girls coming in, going to the bar outside. And we're just 5 of us at this round table. And again, I'm the youngest one of the bunch at about 50. We're not paying attention to anybody. And this is, kind of the young, hip part of town. And so we said, well, let's go to another bar. So we're about to get up and go. And the waitress comes with a tray of Kamikazes. And we goes, what are these? And they goes, oh, some people at the bar sent them over. We said, who? And she points to this group of about 4 young women, probably barely legal drinking age, early 20s. And I'd noticed they'd kind of been in and out and around. So we waved them over and said, why'd you guys buy us Kamikazes? And the women said, you guys just look so cool, and like you're just having such a good time. We just wanted to be a part of that. And you go, really? So we talked to them a little bit and then thanked them and then moved on. But we didn't do a goddamn thing. We were just guys being guys, feeling a depth of connection and enjoyment. It was a beautiful summer day. Just, glad to be alive, glad to be together. And that drew kamikazes to us.
I love it.
Bought by 20-somethings. And again, men don't want to trust or believe that can happen. Or we'll go find the technique to make that happen. Or give me the technique to 10x that happening. You know, we all want.
I want 100 kamikazes.
That is why the pickup stuff is so popular. Is that it's technique ridden. We want the techniques. And I tell you, okay, just go in public. Take a book. Take your laptop. Communicate with the people around you. Get curious. Walk into that place that has the neat art and talk to the guy. Talk to your barber. And things just happen if you will do that. Well, but how do I get the hot woman? Okay. Even the hot women are attracted. I've been in so many places when I would walk in, just because I really worked at being that kind of social animal after I got divorced. And I don't have like lots of charisma. It's not like I'm, young or good looking or got a lot of money, but I'd walk into places and I would turn heads just because people want to know, who is that guy? Who is that guy that walks in like he knows everybody? And I'd get to know bartenders, managers, people, waitresses, so where I lived in that period of time in the Seattle area, I just knew everybody and I knew them by name. And all of a sudden, that just starts attracting energy and attention if you will just get out there and connect with people.
Yeah.
And in a non-needy, I want her because she's hot kind of place.
Totally. One of the things, I actually just gave this kind of practice to a client recently, was I like to practice with ways of being. So rather than things that you do, it's like, well, how can you just be connection in this moment?
Yeah.
So his practice right now is go through life and just in every moment, how can I be connection, or how can I be more connection? Doesn't matter if she's hot, doesn't matter if she's ugly, doesn't matter if she's 90 or 9 or whatever, you know what I mean? Like just being connection with everybody as a practice, because this man is so insular, like he's so contained and so not willing to do that. He has those blinders on where he gets so one focused on not only women, but just certain things. It's like, no, if you want more connection in your life, it's a practice of just trying to be that way more and making messes and doing it wrong and having the courage. I had another guy I interviewed a few episodes ago, young guy, like 26, and he said, I committed to connecting like with 500 people, 500 cold approaches. And he did it. And it wasn't about getting numbers or anything like that, just for the sake of talking to someone.
500 people. It's
wild. Like that's a big amount of people, but especially today, I think people have not only they have an expectation, which makes the stakes really high of just talking to people. Like I need something from them, but also just the way that we interact these days. You could live your whole life never connecting with 500 people basically and get all your essential needs met and everything, right? Everything that you don't really need to connect with people because of the internet and Amazon Prime and all this kind of stuff and Uber Eats and stuff. Like you don't have to even look at anybody really anymore. And it's men wonder why they can't get good women or a date. And you see like this weekend, they can't even hold eye contact with another man. Like imagine how they are with women when they're feeling intimidated and nervous and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I just love what you shared there.
And just, again, live a big life. Say yes to life. Say yes to opportunities. Get to know people. Always ask people their name. Everywhere you go, ask people their name.
Yeah, you're a pro at that. Like with the chefs this last weekend, you knew them all. I didn't know their names, and you're like, "Hey, Terrell or whatever his name
Terrence.
was. Terrence.
Yeah.
Hey, come over here, man. Here, you want a wristband? You want this? You're like buddy with everybody.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
Terrence was asking
you.
me, what are you guys doing out there? The chef. He asked me that. I'm not running the show. And even Morgan, said, "Are you like in charge here?" No, I'm just hanging out. It's just get curious about people. So you go back to say yes. Say yes to, that drew my attention. Even going back to the thing about me getting blocked in with my pickup truck this morning. I had to say yes to that being okay. So I had to say yes to, okay, whatever this is. And maybe that's all it was meant to do, is just to, like I said, I was already running a little bit late from when I'd said I'd get here. I know I had to drive a ways. And I thought, okay, There's a car parked in front of me. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just, I thought, what are my options? And it got resolved very quickly, quicker than I thought it was going to get resolved. And I didn't have to get pissed at anybody, and I didn't, but I just kind of relaxed into what is the situation and what are my options, and it got, so maybe that's all it was meant to do, is just another practice, and just
reminder.
Breathing, grounding, saying yes, being curious. What are my options? What can I do here? Life will go on, even if I'm stuck here for a little while. Maybe that will make life better to be stuck here for a little while. I don't know.
Totally.
But again, just that being able to say yes, connecting with people, asking people their name. I walked into the tattoo store yesterday. Well, in the first minute or two, I asked him his name, and then I said it again, I said, okay, it's Carlos, right? He goes, yeah, just to make sure I had it right. And again, there's so much interesting shit out there if we'll just open to it.
Yeah. 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 I think that would be the antidote to a lot of men's, obviously, isolation, but also just depression and just this, like, I don't know, just this contraction that most people are living in these days. And maybe you notice it more than in the past, or maybe it's always been the same. It's just more noticeable now.
Well, we were talking earlier about, how isolated men are. And I spoke about this weekend when I talked with the guys. And I could be wrong, but my opinion is that I'm going to pull a number out of my ass. Let's just say 80% of men who are chronically isolated, lonely, and it having detrimental effect on them. I'm going to say 80% of them are isolated by choice. Maybe 20%, they're older, maybe had accident, illness, loss of a loved one, maybe addiction, I don't know. But you know what? Because I've just worked with men long enough, and you give men the opportunity to do good work with other men, or I've got a membership program they can join. It doesn't cost much. There's lots of opportunity. And, we got a 30% plus churn. People come for a month and go. And, they all have their own reason why I didn't have time or this or that. But, what I've found is that I think men guard their isolation. They're almost protective of their isolation. Because I think what happens, I think the fear is if we really open up, if we get out of our house, if we get off the technology, get off social media, go talk to barbers and tattoo artists and chefs and waiters and waitresses and bartenders and people. If we go ride public transportation and actually talk to people, not on, what we're afraid of is people are going to invade our life. They're going to take away our time. They're going to take away our options. They're going to take away our freedom. They're going to take away. But what we're most afraid to give up is that shit that we don't really want anybody to know about. How underperforming we are, how avoidant we are, how much time we spend on technology. Men tell me all the time, I waste hours a day on YouTube. I watch people wasting hours a day on Instagram.
Yeah, thank God
hours
for
a day on dating
creators,
apps.
We get to,
the Netflix, the pornography.
Yeah.
And where I think men crave their isolation is in it. It's like it's their emotional tree fort that you had when you were a kid. That you could go climb up, pull the ladder up, get out the Playboy magazine you found under your dad's bed, and nobody's going to bug you, right? Nobody bugs you. And I think our fear is not only if we really connect deeply with people, not only might we have to give up that, but we also might have to be known for how underperforming we are and how much just time we waste because we like wasting time on that stuff. We're addicted to the wasting time on social media, pornography, and Netflix, and the internet, and YouTube. And I think that's a primary reason why men don't connect.
It's why we took their phones away this weekend, because we're like, that's going to be an easy escape for men. Now they're forced to connect. And then we give them all these prompts where they're forced to be vulnerable and talk about all their shortcomings, and they're
Yeah.
forced to like show all these
And
emotions.
everybody's going, "Oh, you too?"
Feel all these things they haven't
I'm not the
felt.
only one that spends too much time on YouTube
It's
and too much time jacking off to
totally.
porn. You too?
Yeah, so no tech, getting vulnerable, being real with themselves and with others, and what does it lead to? Like the most profound and deepest relationships of their lives in a few short days.
And then within a few more short days, we're back to doing that shit again.
Exactly.
It is just, and again, it's just the world we live in. And I keep going back to, I think the answer is, again, the depth of connection with men. And you know me, I use technology. I'm sending messages to people I love on Signal all the time.
It's a tool.
WhatsApp, Signal, SMS, doesn't matter. I get on Zoom with people I care about. If I have any, I was telling somebody yesterday, I said, if you have any thought about a person that you care about, your mother, a sibling, a friend you haven't talked to for a while, don't think, oh, I'll get in touch with them later. In that moment, send them a message. Was just thinking about you, miss you, love you, hope you're having a great, whatever it is. In that moment, send a message. Because, my mother's about to be 89, lives alone, has had a stroke. My dad died 12 years ago, whatever. And, I think about her a lot. And now I've got this habit. If I have a thought about my mother, I send her a message. Why not? How long does that take? 12 seconds to send somebody? Use the technology. And it will build connection. And so we can use this technology to expand our world and expand our connection, or we can use it to restrict it and kind of just tuck it down and where nobody gets in here. Nobody gets in here. I'm not going to let anybody see this because I might lose it, and they might find out, about all this stuff about me. So
Absolutely.
I'm just, I'm an evangelist for, just get out and connect with real live human beings.
Yeah, and you've been a huge inspiration just for keeping relationships alive and engaged, because every week or so I'll just get a little gift from you, good morning or buenos dias or anything
happy
like
Sunday.
that. And it's awesome. Like, you really live that. You're not just talking about
I have all that automated.
Yeah, totally. It's AI now, right? Oh, it's been 2 weeks since you haven't contacted Evan. No, but no, it really is. It's been really inspiring for me as well, just to see how you really live that, and the abundance that it's created, not only of connection in your life, but of everything else. You've created just a very abundant life. And I think really at the core of that, what I'm hearing is because you're always staying curious, always saying yes, and always open to connection. And that's what one of my coaches gave this kind of rule, ABC, always be connection. And it was really helpful to think about all the time. Always be connection.
I like
ABC. That. Mm-hmm. I want to wind down here, but I do want to ask you a few more questions. One thing is, you may not even know this, my podcast is called Undomesticate. Undomesticate is the name of the podcast, and I'm curious to you, because you talk a lot about how men get domesticated.
Yeah.
What do you think an undomesticated man is? How would you?
It's funny, making the connection around undomesticated. I was reading a Dean Koontz book a while, and it actually scared the bejeebers out of me because all of it. So I even had to read it a second time because it had dogs in it, and telepathic dogs, and there's this dog that it escapes, and it's telepathic, and there's a scene in there where a balloon is floating by, and he just starts chasing the balloon and jumping for the balloon, and it references to that part of him that's still that is inside this undomesticated. All dogs evolved from wolves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is so cool. The little Chihuahua, evolved from a wolf. My pit bull evolved from a wolf, and I even wonder if all dogs still have a wolf brain. They still see themselves in the world as wolves. I think maybe they do, because even the Chihuahua thinks, "Don't fuck with me, asshole. I'm a wolf," And so but so the in the book, the Dean Koontz said something about, even though dogs have been domesticated and live around people, and they've been with people for thousands of years, and the dogs' lives have improved and humans' lives have improved because of the connection of people and dogs. But he just mentioned that part that was still undomesticated inside of him. And that just kind of got my attention. And in talking with men, a lot of times the men I work with, as we talk about, especially masculine, feminine energies, a lot of the men I work with, acknowledge I've got a pretty strong feminine side. I go, me too. You do too.
Mm-hmm.
We got this. We're kind of natural going into that maybe more of that flow state, more of the seeking of connection and flow of love and appreciating praise and caring what we wear and how we look and the guy said, well, how can I learn to be more masculine? And I go, okay, well, number one, I credit Jonah for this. Let's not be misogynistic towards our own inner feminine. Let's not hate on the fact that we're feminine. It's beautiful. It's great. It's part of the yin and yang. It's the yin, in the whole yin and yang that we are. But when guys say, well, how can I be more masculine? I go, I don't know that we have to work at being more masculine. I think we just have to become more conscious and start peeling back the effects of being domesticated, stripping that back. The masculine's there, right? I don't think it's gone away, but we've just pushed it so far. That's what domestication does, is it just push it down so far. And, we've gotten, a lot of practices we've done with John. I know a guy named Traver Boehm that has a program called Uncivilized.
Yeah.
And Jordan Peterson has a quote that a dangerous man, somebody who's not a nice man, said, no, a good man's not a nice man. A good man's a dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Paraphrasing Jordan Peterson. And Traver has a quote similar to that for Uncivilized. And John talks about us getting in touch with our wild man and our beast. And I think to become undomesticated we don't have to go out and somehow learn to be masculine and a beast. I think we just have to strip away that stuff. And for example, if there was ever a conspiracy or a plot to demasculinize men, it'd be, let's get them addicted to social media and the internet and television. If anybody's going to cook up a plan, I think social media is fundamentally feminizing, and men spend. I tell guys, can you even just take the social media apps off your phone? Number one, they're tracking you everywhere anyway and taking your data. If you want to look at social media, just do it on your laptop, do it on your computer, your desktop. It'll ship that thing of everywhere you go in public, you pull your phone out. And I did have my phone this week, but luckily there's only internet in one place. There's no cell connection. And I would go and check, messages and just, but I was actually grateful that it still did limit me, that when I was in the little cabana that I was staying in, couldn't get anything on my phone. And I was happy for that.
Absolutely.
I read more, meditated more, journaled more. So if I can even just get men to take social media apps off their phone, and if they use social media, no judgment of social, there's value in it as well, but just use it in a more conscious way. And how much time do you spend watching TV, surfing the internet for things you don't need or not going to buy, consuming content and information? And that's what I really seen, in your generation that grew up with broadband internet. When my boys, my son and stepson, 14, 15 years old, we finally got broadband internet. Had dial-up before. But you know what? All they did was just steal music on Napster and download porn. And we tried everything under the sun to get them off. We finally went back to dial-up, and trying to download porn on dial-up, probably.
Someone picks up the phone.
One line at a time.
Yeah.
One line. I think that's a boob. I think it's a boob. I think it's an elbow. And so your generation has grown up, and you're very well informed. You're a sponge for information. You've had many experiences. My son is a sponge of information. He can talk about anything intelligently. He has a master's degree, and he just knows shit about shit because he grew up with the internet. So that's your generation. That's all you've known. Nowadays, guys your age don't even watch TV anymore. Everybody watches just stuff on their phones. I'm thinking, that's not interesting, watching video on your phone. Watch it on a computer, on a television. It's better. But TV in my house hasn't been turned on in probably 2 years. And I got 2 teenagers in my house. They're on their phones. Actually, I got 3 teenagers, counting my son's girlfriend. They're on their phone. And so maybe one way we can get less domesticated is just if we can get off our phones a little bit, go have those real experiences, talking to our barbers, talking to the guy in the tattoo store, talking to the waiter, talking to the waitress, talking to the bartender, just talking to people. And if I could just encourage people, just ask people their name and make a point to remember their name. It shifts everything. It brings you out of your shell and, just lets things happen. So again, I don't think we have to go figure out how to get more masculine or I think we just have to pay more attention to what are the things that got handed to us by our family, by religion, by culture, by media, that has just stripped away any fierceness or strength or dangerousness, darkness that we have.
Yeah.
And let's let it come up and take a look at it and see how it empowers us and maybe attracts more to us and maybe makes the world a better place.
I couldn't agree more. It's less about finding that wildness because it's already innately in
It's
us.
there.
It's more about stripping away the conditioning, right? And I think if you let the animal back into the wild, it can become feral. And sometimes I think this happens with like domesticated pigs. If you let them out into the wild, they'll actually become wild animals again.
Right, there's
sometimes
hope for
it
us
takes
then.
a generation
for
or
us
two
domesticated
or
pigs.
exactly,
there's hope for us
right?
We can become wild boars.
I want to be a wild boar. I think that's ultimately what I'm hearing. But no, I really appreciate that perspective, and I agree. I've been trying to be much more judicious with my phone use. I have an app called Upped, which blocks significant chunks of the day where I cannot access any social media or any apps because we kind of need that. We got this. They've built this technology to absolutely hook us. They've got scientists researching how to keep us addicted, and so it's definitely rolling a boulder up a hill, and you have to find those ways of using it as a tool because it's a very powerful tool that can keep us in connection. But it also, I notice I'm much more of a miserable person when I'm on my phone a lot. And this last weekend, part of getting the nourishment was, even though I was on my phone somewhat, I was 80% of the time.
It's a lot less. Yeah, for me too. So I still had it, but it was a lot less. And again, for me, just the best way I know is I just don't put apps on my phone that I don't want to waste time on, that I don't want to distract. I just don't put them on my phone.
Yeah. Well, this has been really fun. Why don't you let people know you've got a lot going on? You got your community. Of course, you've got a number of books, everything else. Just anyone listening or watching this that wants to get a bit more of an experience in your world, how can they connect with you?
They can go to drglover.com, just drglover.com. Got my courses there, podcasts, workshops, consultation. And I've launched a men's membership program. Right now, it's mostly virtual, and it may continue that way. We're doing some local stuff, but I don't know that I want to venture into doing like the workshops that you're doing. But I think I see our program supporting and collaborating with people like you that are doing what you do, and all. I just love that there's so many great men's coaches and great men's programs out there. And I could see my men's program is Integration Nation, and it's about good men doing better. And just how do we become integrated men? How do we take these dark parts of ourselves that we don't look at and take this part that we let the world see and integrate them together, bring our light and our dark together, our masculine, our feminine, our spiritual and material. How do we integrate that to be more complete men? So that's what we're trying to do with Integration Nation, give men community, initiation. So guys can check out integrationnation.net, and be glad to have them come take a look around and find a band of brothers there. And like I said, I don't feel like I'm in competition with any program. I often have, guys who are, running other programs I interview them on my program, and, we direct, go check out these people, go check out these guys, go check out these programs. And we're all in the same game, and that's helping men around the world live their best lives. And
a lot of men to serve.
There's about 3 billion of them.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I think we actually need some more help.
Co-creation, not competition.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. Well, thank you so much. Just such an honor to have you in this conversation, and also just for everything, for your friendship, your eldership, your guidance, your support, and all the myriad of ways, and just the work that you do in the world. I really honor you. I love you coming this weekend, and just how much you serve those men. Just not only by the session that you ran, by your presence, your availability. I have this one image in my mind that I see some pictures of you're kind of in this old wooden chair, almost like it could be a rocking chair, the big white goatee, and there's guys in a semicircle sitting on the ground like kindergartners and standing there. You had this whole crowd eager, asking you questions, putting up their hand, and it was just such a beautiful moment, and it was so important for us to have. We're young guys, all of us. Nick's 41, I think. That's the oldest. We're all that's pretty young guys, right? To have someone with real seniority and a lot more life experience and experience in this work was just so profound for the men, and it served them so deeply. And that's an image I'll never forget. So just thank you so much for everything, man.
It was a gift. It was a blessing. I was grateful for you guys the entire time for letting me just come hang out, feed me well, let me hang out with good men, and do what I love doing, and that's connecting with men, teaching men. And we often heard of when you talk about going to learn from somebody. We went and sat at the master's feet.
Yeah.
Went and learned at their feet. And I did have that experience. I'm just looking around. Here's all these guys just sitting on this concrete floor, just asking questions, listening, and I'm going, it did feel good. It did feel fulfilling, and it felt like, okay, that's why I'm here, is to share whatever I've learned in any way that might be helpful to other people. And again, I'm committed to working with men. So, I love you. I appreciate you. I'm glad I was like talking with you, whether we got cameras on or not.
Yeah, totally.
We'll always find a good excuse to hang out and talk and go deep, and never know what direction we're going to go. And it's good to get to be on your program. And I'm cheering for you guys with the programs you guys are running, and I'd be happy to drop in anytime you want, OG, GOAT, El Jefe, whatever, to come by.
You'll be back, man. That's for sure. If if you're a yes to it, then we're a yes to you coming soon.
I just keep working at being a yes.
All right.
Being a yes.
Well, I love you, brother.
I love you, man.
Thanks for doing this.